Hello, welcome back. I'm Doc Palmer. I'm the author of McGraw-Hill's best-selling reliability book, the Maintenance Planning and Scheduling Handbook. Maintenance planning and scheduling is a great competitive edge for our companies. Most people don't get it. What we want to do is run planning as a Deming cycle, admitting that plans are not perfect and we're not trying to tell the craftspersons how to do their jobs. And the scheduling, we want to fully load weekly schedules to defeat Parkinson's law, which accomplishes the real purpose of scheduling, which is to help us complete more work than we would normally complete. Our objective is not necessarily to have high schedule compliance or to make a calendar to see where everybody is. Today and maybe the next 2 or 3 sessions, we're going to talk about the storeroom. The storeroom is the least well-attended presentation at maintenance conferences. I've seen that over the years. But the storeroom is just vital to help us in our mission as maintenance. Maintenance is not a necessary evil. It's an investment in reliability. Reliability gives us a product that we sell profitably in an environmentally safe and legally correct manner. Well, the storeroom is an investment in maintenance. The problem with maintenance is we can cut out maintenance altogether and make a lot of money, save a lot of money in a year. But after that, our reliability fails and we fail as a company. That's the same with the storeroom. You can totally drain the storeroom of all the parts and save a lot of money. But then you've ruined your maintenance program and you've ruined your investment in reliability. So you lose your plant and your company as well. The storeroom is an especially glaring cost. There's a 20% carrying cost that we'll talk about. So for a $10 million storeroom, it costs us $2 million a year, whether we use the parts or not. Well, we could cut the storeroom in half and save $1 million a year in carrying costs. But then we've crippled maintenance, and then we're not making the proper investment in our plant's reliability, and we lose our profitability again. The most common strategy in the storeroom is to keep cutting it until maintenance squeals. So let's see if we can cut the storeroom by 5%. You never know until you try. Let's see if we can cut it by 5% again. You never know until you try. And we do that every year, and the theory is that at some point maintenance squeals and we back up a little bit and we're perfect. The problem with that is maintenance doesn't squeal. Maintenance, if they don't have the right parts, they'll do the job a different way with an inferior part. Maybe they'll cannibalize another piece of equipment that's not necessarily needed at the moment to get the part out they need. They'll take apart a spare pump to get the gasket out to fix the pump that they need to fix. Or they'll maybe use a more expensive part, which could lead to, well, why do we have to stock both parts if the more expensive part will cover both cases? And all that, makes sense in some aspect as far as saving inventory costs. But the problem is that even when maintenance doesn't squeal and they get the job done, it might take them longer to do the job. And if it takes longer to do a maintenance job because you're scrambling on parts, you are precluding yourself from doing another maintenance job. And the job that you're not doing because you're scrambling for parts on the more immediate job that you have to finish now, the job you're not doing is more proactive in nature. It can wait. It's a work order to head off a problem. Say you want to grease a bearing. Well, we'll put off greasing the bearing because we're replacing a bearing over here. Well, we want to do proactive maintenance. We want to grease a bearing properly when nobody's yelling at us, instead of replacing a bearing at an inopportune time, collateral damage and loss of product. So cutting ourselves out from doing proactive maintenance is the worst thing that we can do. So we just can't cut the storeroom like that. Well, we'll get into more details. The world-class, so they say, the storeroom should actually report to maintenance. because maintenance needs those parts. The storeroom is not the first place to save money. Most companies have the storeroom reporting to a purchasing or other separate logistics group. The fear is that if the maintenance people control the storeroom, we'll have a spare plant behind the door. And obviously that's overkill and that's too many spare parts. But if the purchasing department manages the storeroom, they'll save money by not carrying any spare parts. Well, that's obviously overkill in the other direction. And to be honest with you, the storerooms I've seen around the world, the ones run by the maintenance department, are not that well organized. Sometimes it's hard to find parts and stuff. And that, of course, would lead to overstocking because you can't find the parts that you needed, among other things. But the storeroom, the 3 parts that they will carry are very well organized and they're on a shelf and you can find them. So obviously we need to work together, and this is a coordinating issue, working together. But the more we understand, we in the maintenance force, the workforce, the more we understand the purchasing, the inventory system, the more we can coordinate and get better support. So I want to talk about some concepts today. Then later we'll talk about how big should your storeroom be, and protection against reducing stock, and some other items of interest. But just as an easy starter concept would be LIFO versus FIFO. And I'm going to get another marker because this one's not working too well. So I'll get this one over here. LIFO versus FIFO. LIFO is an inventory concept. It's last in, first out, and FIFO is first in, first out. It's really easy to conceptualize this with a drawer pull in your inventory department that's full of spare parts, say gaskets. I'll just call them widgets. If you did LIFO, the last widget that you put in would be the first one that you pull out. So, and then when you replace those, you replace them here at the front, then you use them here at the front. And the problem is this stock here loses its shelf life. And when you finally need a bunch of these, they're not in good shape to use. That's easy to conceptualize with a drawer pull. It's a little harder to manage properly when you're hanging O-rings, V-belts, or gaskets on a peg in the warehouse. That's probably not a good practice, but it's very common. And it's more difficult for the storeroom to rotate your stock. So that's essentially, the FIFO rotates our stock, and that's what we want to do. So the storeroom in this case should make a more conscientious effort to do that. Just an inventory concept. They might call it rotating stock. Now your accounting group, they might take the average cost, and they might be allowed to do that because of their guiding generally accepted accounting principles. The reason they would do that is when you first put in an item, when you put it in at the back, that would be first in. The first one, it was the first one that came out. They change in cost over the years. You originally put in a $10 gasket. Over the years, you've used those. Now the gaskets cost $20. And eventually the ones at the front that you're about to use are $10. The ones in the middle are $20. Then there's some $50. And maybe these cost $100 now, the ones that you're replacing in there. Your cost of these gaskets that you use, sales minus expenses, equals your profit. And your profit you're taxed on. The accounting group might use the average, and that would reduce the expense. That would increase the expense. So instead of a $10 gasket, you use the average cost to say it's a $50 gasket. And also at the end of the year, inventory is property that you own. So there's a property tax. So the inventory group, the accounting group there would prefer that those are all $10 gaskets or average cost. not that you've used the $10 gaskets. So that's just an accounting thing. They're a little different, and they're using averages and stuff. But we want to rotate stock, and that's just an obvious concept. Something that we don't think about too much in maintenance, but just an example of something they do in the storeroom. Now, there's a huge ongoing cost of inventory that I mentioned, and it's a carrying cost shown by C, and it's typically, the industry number is 20%. That means if we're carrying $10 million in the storeroom, that costs the company $2 million per year, whether you're using these parts or not. It's the property tax at the end of the year. It's the cost of maintaining the stock. It's the spoilage. Some things, you put them in inventory, and by the time you need them, they've lost their shelf life. They got stolen. They just didn't keep it in the storeroom or something. They got damaged. There's also the utilities, cost of maintaining it, the depreciation on the building. There's also what's called a cost of money. If the maintenance department did not insist we have $10 million sitting in that storeroom, you could have used that $10 million to buy more raw material to produce a product, which is worth a lot more than the $10 million. You could have replaced an unreliable piece of equipment. You could have hired some more maintenance staff. You could have put it in the bank and drawn interest on it. You could put it in the stock market. You could have invested in real estate. There's a lot of things you can do with $10 million, but we're just going to let it sit there because $10 million might be the right size inventory for the size of our company and our situation, which we'll talk about that next time. What is the right size inventory? But there's a big cost to that, and there's a lot of pressure to reduce that. Some people say that, well, we'll just use the inventory for reactive maintenance. That way we can carry a smaller inventory. For proactive maintenance, where we know ahead of time we'll need the part, we'll just buy it then. But proactive maintenance, my definition is you know about it a week ahead of time. It's not reactive maintenance. Reactive maintenance is we found the problem, we've got to take care of it this week. It can't wait till next week. But if it can wait till next week, you can get more organized to work on it. That's more proactive. Well, finding something a week ahead of time really is not enough time for our purchasing an inventory item to quickly go out and buy that without a large purchasing cost, emergency transit, get it in for us. And then also, if you're going to replace a filter every month, you're not going to buy one filter every month. You're going to buy a box of filters that maybe will last you a year. So the storeroom should be for ongoing routine maintenance, but not necessarily for big projects or big outages. Now, the big projects and big outages, they might be able to use some small consumables and things from our storeroom, but the major purpose of that outage, say it's to replace a bunch of boiler tubes, you might not have that much boiler tube commonly on hand to support a large outage. Or you have a project to replace all the 2-inch pinch valves throughout your chemical plant with a new brand that's more reliable. You're not going to suddenly have 200 pinch valves for the maintenance force of the project team to use. So that should be ongoing maintenance. Now, going back to just reducing the storeroom by 5% every year until maintenance squeals, all maintenance is not the same. There's a classification of inventory called ABC, where 10% of all the sheer number that you have in the storeroom is actually 80% of the value. And these are your A items. That might be a large $50,000 motor. It might be you have two $40,000 pumps. You have three $20,000 gearboxes. How are you going to cut that down by 5%? And then on the other end, %, of the value, so this would be dollars, this would be the sheer numbers, are only worth 10% of the value. These would be C items. These would be like zip ties, cheap cotton gloves, paper towels, garbage bags, a lot of small fittings and tubing and stuff. And then the items in the middle, they're about 10% of the cost and 10% of the sheer number. So if you were going to cut your storeroom by 5%, and we're talking money-wise, because that's where it makes a difference, you could take out 40% of your entire storeroom and only save 5%. And you've crippled a lot of maintenance jobs. You could do that one more time and cut another 5% the next year and take out only 10% of your total cost, but 80%, you've taken out all your zip ties, all your cotton gloves, all your fittings, bolts, nuts, and you've crippled every maintenance job. You've only saved, for $10 million storeroom, you've saved $1 million and you've crippled your entire maintenance department. Now you can't make the required investment in profitable, reliable production in a safe, legal, environmentally conscious manner. Okay, well let's cut the A items. Well, you can't. How are you gonna, if you really need three $20,000 gearboxes, how are you gonna cut that by 5%? Maybe you could just carry one, but if you only got one, say $40,000 motor, and you really need that, how are you gonna cut that by 5%? So it's not just as easy as cutting that by 5%. Added to the problem that maintenance won't squeal. So some people have proposed just in time. It's a popular concept in industry. We've probably all heard the terms before. Just in time. But just in time is a production quality concept. It's not appropriate for maintenance inventory, even though it sounds like you're getting something just in time, which would sound like spare parts. So let's say, let me give an example of an inventory production support of a production line. So we're going to make a car, and this is, by the way, not the orders that we would make a real car. But let's just say we have a bumper line. We make the bumper and we drop it onto a chassis. We're going to put the bumper and the chassis onto a frame. We're going to an engine. We're going to add tires. And let's say it's going to be a stainless steel car so we don't have to paint it. We're going to end up with a shiny automobile ready to go, and we're going to make some money. So we buy a bunch of stainless steel plates and we start to make a bumper. And we find out that we bought the wrong kind of stainless steel. It's shiny, but it's not the right kind. And so the vendors told us they won't take it back. So we have a lot of scrap on our hand, and it's waste, which costs money. So somebody has an idea. Well, let's buy the plates we need to support the bumper line just in time. We'll just buy a few plates just in time. It's a great idea. We won't have a big waste if we buy the wrong thing. So we start making bumpers, a lot of bumpers, and then we start to attach one to a chassis. And someone says, uh-oh. What do you mean, uh-oh? Well, it won't fit the chassis. You've made it the wrong way. Well, we can't unmake it because then it won't be a ductile shock absorbing bumper. So all that is scrap. Maybe in the future we ought to make just a few bumpers just in time to support the the chassis line. So we get that straightened out. And where we used to have a lot of what's called work in progress, work in progress, which is really expensive because there's a carrying cost of 20%. It's money you could have used to spend on something else, but you've got it tied up in an incomplete car. We've cut that down, not so much for the saving of the work in progress, but the danger of if we made something wrong, there's something wrong with the line, something got loose on the chassis line, now we're making the chassis improperly, it won't fit on the frame. And it used to be that maintenance could have the chassis line for an 8-hour shift to work on. Now they'll give it to us in maintenance for about a half hour to work on it. So it's very tricky to work on maintenance now. But it's not a parts, it's not a inventory saving, it's a quality issue for the production line. The inventory for maintenance, we don't have the exact timing of when we'll need the parts. We know kind of on a yearly basis we use about so many of these parts. So there's another issue instead of just in time that we look on. So there's a carrying cost of 20%. So for $10 million of inventory, that cost us, get my head straight here, $2 million a year because of the carrying cost. And we talked about why their carrying cost is there. Well, there's a purchasing cost also. And for a long time, the industry number was about $100 to process a purchase order. That number is probably higher now. It's continually going up just with inflation. But perhaps with artificial intelligence and more automation and stuff, that cost will come down. But there's a cost in processing a purchase order. There's the cost of the purchasing department, the cost of their building, the cost of their janitorial system, the cost of their salaries. And yes, they can always process one more purchase order, but eventually they have to hire a new purchasing person, make a bigger building, have a bigger support team. So your accounting department can tell you the cost per purchase order. So if we were to buy a $200 valve, it actually cost us $300 if we buy just one valve at a time. So obviously we could save money by buying more valves at the same time. So let's say we buy 2 valves, each valve costs $200. Instead of $300, the total's $500, but it's $250 per valve. So we've saved $50 per valve. Well, not necessarily, because we only needed one valve at this time. The other valve's going to go in the storeroom, and there's a 20% carrying cost on that. So 20% of 200 is $40 per year for every extra valve that we carry. So there's a cost to that. So there's actually a curve here. If we buy too much at a time, we're actually costing the company extra here. And if we buy too few at a time, we're spending extra money in the purchasing department. So there's a sweet spot right here when we do order there, how many we should order. And appropriately, that's called the economic order quantity. And I believe that was an equation developed by a person named Ford, not Henry Ford, over 100 years ago. And the equation is equal to the square root of 2 times the quantity we use per year times the purchasing cost for one purchase order divided by our carrying cost, which is 20%. So let's say we use 3 of these valves per year. when we do, and I'm not teaching you so that in the maintenance department, this is more of a maintenance class so that you can remember how many to order. This, I'm telling you what the inventory purchasing group should be doing for you and some of the things they have to contend with that we don't want to worry about. We just want them to support us in spare parts. So let's figure this out. That would be equal to the square root of 2 times, we use 3 per year, times our purchasing cost is $100 per purchase order, divided by 20% of one valve, which we already figured that was $40. So just to simplify the math, I'll cross out the zeros, I'll cross out the 2, I'll make the 4 into a 2. That's equal to the square root of 30 over 2. That's equal to the square root of 15. We'll just say that's about the same as the square root of 16, which is equal to 4. So when I buy these, I ought to buy 4 at a time. If I buy 2 at a time, because I only use about 3 of them a year, that will cost us extra money up here. If I buy more than 4 at a time, that'll cost extra money here. So throughout all the different items in the storeroom, they all have their own economic order quantity based on the price of the item reflected in the carrying cost. And the purchasing cost per purchase order, you can get that from your accounting department. Your accounting department also has your carrying costs. So we expect our, I'll just write that out here. So we'll have that. We expect your inventory purchasing group to know what the economic, and be using the economic order quantity, which is 2 times the quantity per year. You expect to use all this as plus or minus in maintenance, not even like an assembly line. The purchasing cost for one purchase order divided by the carrying cost of one item. So that leads us to that amount we use per year and when we should reorder. And we're just talking terms, getting used to the storeroom and some of their issues so that we can talk with our storeroom group and purchasing group more productively. So the quantity on hand, let's just say we buy 4 of these. There's 4 on hand at our plant in our storeroom. If Q equals 3 per year, after about 4 months, it's all plus or minus, we go down to 3. After another 4 months, we get down to 2. After about 4 months, we get down to 1 in the storeroom. And then after 4 months, we use that 1 and we're down to 0. Well, if our lead time from, hey, we need it, the storeroom talks to purchasing, they order it, it gets on the shelf, it's actually on the shelf again. If all that is equal to 2 months, we can put our reorder point at 0. As soon as we get down to 0, we place an order. About 2 months go by. We're taking a little bit of gamble that we're not going to use one right away. After 2 months, our 4 come in. And we're back up to 4. That was our economic order quantity. And so that's how much we actually ordered. And then we end up putting 4 in stock. Well, if our lead time is equal to 5 months, that would mean we ought to change our reorder point to 1. We get down to 2, 4 months go by, we use that one. We get down to 1, we immediately place an order. That's the reorder point. And then 4 months go by, because there's a 5-month lead time, our order hasn't come in yet. Another month goes by, we get down to 0, our 4 come in, we're back up to 4. Well, the maintenance department together with the storeroom should be terminating this. Look, there are times, I know we only use about 3 of them a year, but when we need them, we need two. If we've got to have two in stock, and we don't have two in stock, we're going to be in trouble. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but occasionally we'll need two, and we really need two, or it's a big deal. Okay, well, we'll make two the safety stock. And since our lead time is 5 months, we'll have to put our reorder point at 3. So when we get down to 3, we'll place an order. 4 months go by, we get down to 2, about a month go by. Our economic order quantity is still the same. I'll erase this here. Lead time equals 5 months. We get down to 2, our 4 come in, we get down to 6 quantity on hand. Then we get down to 5, 4, 3. Our reorder point's at 3, we place an order. After we get down to 2, our economic order quantity that we should order comes in, and we're back up to 6. That's how the system works. There's a quirk in here, though, that we don't use the terms reorder point and safety stock as much. In most of the computer systems I see around the country and the world, they have a min-max. And it's a little bit unclear what that means, okay, to us in maintenance. Well, is the min the reorder point, or is it the safety stock, or is it something else? It is usually the reorder point. When you get down to this level, in our example, that would be the min, you should reorder it. And now, because of the lead time, you get a little bit below that, but you've already placed your order. The min is when you get to the order. Some companies use min as the safety stock. We never want to go below that level, which is more intuitively obvious, but it's normally the reorder point is the min. And there are a few companies that the reorder point is when you get one less than the min, we'll order it. Look, when we get one item below the min, we'll place the order. So that's 3 possible interpretations. So if we're trying to fine tune, especially items where you don't have thousands on the shelf, you just get like 1 or 2 of each item, you really need to coordinate and understand that when you're trying to set a safety stock, talking with your storeroom people. So that's one issue. Now, your storeroom's under this incredible amount of pressure to reduce the stock. That $10 million is costing $2 million a year. If we could cut that in half, we could save $1 million a year. Cut the storeroom from $10 million to $5 million. The carrying cost drops from $2 million to $1 million. We've saved $1 million a year. So here's what happens if we're not careful. We've got the system set up with agreements where, look, the safety stock really is 2. We always want 2 in there. So if you're ordering at 1 below the min, you need to put the min at 4. So you order when it's 3, so we'll always have 2 in stock. Or if your min is where you reorder it and your lead time is 5, you need to reorder it at 3. Don't get down to 2, because that's what we've agreed on the safety stock. Regardless of that, even if we're on the same wavelength what those mean, a lot of the storeroom may be because they're understaffed or they've got things to do. A lot of times in this situation where we definitely want a safety stock of 2, there'll only be 1 in stock. So they're effectively cutting the storeroom from 10 million to 5 million if every item was like this, because that cuts it in half, by slow walking purchase orders. So we don't want that. This would lead to your maintenance group carrying hidden stores. So one crew says, look, I've got to have 2 of those, and the storeroom's just going to carry 1. I better carry 2 over here. And then another group in maintenance says, they're not carrying 2 in stock like they should. We've been bit by that. In fact, there's been times where we need to, and they say we're out. So we're going to carry 2 over here. And then another group says we're going to carry 2 over here. So you have these hidden stores because the storeroom won't carry 2. They'll only carry 1 a lot of times. So instead of carrying 2 in stock, the storeroom thinks they're saving the company money by carrying 1. But we're carrying 2, 4, 6, 7 in stock. So we've more than tripled what our true carrying cost should be because we have these hidden stores. Well, you might say those are off the books. No, that's money we've spent on stuff. And we're going to keep replenishing these all together. And that's money we can't use for something else. That's why there's a lot of pressure to reduce hidden stores. But the underlying factor is we need to be better at communicating with the storeroom anyways. Yeah, join me again on a future session. We'll talk about how big should your storeroom be. There's 3 basic industry guides. We'll talk about some protections to help us with KPIs to work against the storeroom. We'll also look at a chart to tell us, should we even put it in the storeroom? And then we'll share some other thoughts that I've heard and agree with at conferences that would help us. So, thank you for joining me. You can check out my website at palmerplanning.com for some conference presentations and magazine articles that I've written in the past. And thank you for letting me be part of your family today.